Alright, well, this has been a long time coming, but I just wanted to send a message to Lucasfilm and Disney dealing with Star Wars. I just wanted to say, even though it's nearly unlikely that they'll ever see this, but I just wanted to let the companies know that I'm done with the new canon. I'm done. I've given it since 2014, when the decanonization of the EU happened, and, well, to be quite frank, while it had a few bright spots, I think Twilight Company was an amazing book and the best thing to come out of the EA Battlefront games. But overall, it's left me underwhelmed and, worst of all, angry. I am in the camp that absolutely hates The Last Jedi and the sequel trilogy in general. So every time one of my friends decide to bring up the sequel trilogy or the new canon in general, I always have to make some remark. Because I love tearing apart the sequel trilogy. Those films are awful, in my opinion. Devoid of creativity, and just have done nothing but destroy what has come before. So as I said, I'm done. And so now, what should I do? What does someone like me do who gave the new canon a chance? Well, as you can no doubt tell behind me, I'm a massive EU fan. And yes, I'm referring to it as the EU. I have ever since I was a kid, and I will continue to call it the EU. Now, I didn't really start getting into the EU until, unfortunately, I realized these new films, along with the rest of the new canon, just weren't doing it for me. And, the thing is, Star Wars for me has always been the 6 films. Yes, and I'm referring to the special editions here. I'm not one of those sticklers for special editions are awful. But my rambling is just getting to the point of this book. The Ultimate Visual Guide, the 30th Anniversary Special Edition. Now, as a kid, I would flip through this thing a lot. I wasn't much of a reader, so I would mostly just look at the pictures. And just flipping through this book and finding out all this information. Let's see if I can find something here. Yeah. Such as the Old Republic era, mostly dealing with nihilists. Like I said, I wasn't much of a reader, but I'd always just look at the pictures and just be wowed at just stuff I've never seen in the films. point I'm trying to make is that while I did give the new canon a chance, my heart was always with the EU. So it's hard to say if, even if I did love the new canon, I would actually stick with it. I don't know. Because, like I said, Star Wars for me is the 6 films, the EU, and TCW to an extent. But with all that out of the way, what should be done about it? Well, the answer is simple. Give us more legends. Of course, there will be people who will denounce it for one reason or another. Now, in my experience, most EU haters are people who've barely gotten into the EU and are just spewing out the same regurgitated nonsense, such as Skippy the Droid being canon, even though he was Infinities in Star Wars Tales. And on a side note, the EU was canon. There are plenty of quotes to support this. If you're still one of those people who try and claim that it wasn't, you're wrong. But moving on, and to show Disney and Lucasfilm my support, I've gotten out and bought a few books with the Legends banner. Now, of course, would I prefer the books without the Legends banner? Yes. As you can see, most of the books I have don't have the banner. It's just cheaper to buy them in lots on eBay. And I, like many other EU fans, went out and bought issue 108. Now, I'm in the process of reading the Marvel comic. I've gotten the Omnibuy and reading the first volume now up to issue 11, I think. Really good stuff so far. It's gonna take me a while until I get to that, but the point is, I bought a new Legend story. The first one we've gotten in like 5 years. I'm serious about supporting Legends in any way I can. In my opinion, it was really foolish of Disney and Lucasfilm to disregard it. Make their new canon, sure, whatever, but to disregard a continuity that people have been following for years, who have been invested in it for years. It baffles the mind, the decision-making process that can go into these sorts of things. But what would I want them to do if they did announce that they were bringing back Legends, that they were making new stories within the universe? Well, firstly, as much as I would like to, they are most likely just going to stick with books and comics. But you know what? I'm fine with that. I mean, straight to DVD animated films would be nice, but they'll most likely just stick to the books and comics, which, you know what? Perfectly fine with. So firstly, make TCW, the Clone Wars CGI animated series from 2008, S-canon or an in-universe holodrama or propaganda. And when I refer to TCW, I'm also referring to its time material, the video games, books, and comics. Because as most people should be aware, TCW wasn't made with the continuity of the EU in mind. And because of that, we got a ton of contradictions. And while some of them were explained, just having that series and its time material in the EU canon just doesn't work. And I've linked in this description below Captain Fordo's 2 videos about how it doesn't fit in Legends. Highly recommend them. They're great. They really opened my eyes. And yes, I am a fan of TCW. I grew up with that show. I watched every episode as it aired with my dad, so that series will always hold a special place in my heart. But as long as it's still in the Legends timeline, it just doesn't fit. So with that, next obvious choice would be to smooth over the remaining retcons left over by TCW and other EU works. Now if you remove TCW into S-canon or make it in-universe propaganda, well, suddenly you have a character like Adventress, who was completely ruined in TCW along with Quinlan Voss, and their stories can just stay as they are. And that'll be that. But with someone like Darth Maul, who went from being a species, I'm spacing on what at the moment, but he went from being something to Zabrak. I'm spacing on the planet he originally came from. But in TCW, he was turned into a Zabrak and Dathomirian hybrid, which is referenced in the Darth Plagueis novel. But of course, if there's one thing the EU was always good at, was taking a retcon and spinning it in a way that made sense in universe, so that everything could flow together. So I'm certain that it would be easy to come up with something. Next up would be to complete unfinished storylines. Personally, before they start anything new, I would love for them to just finish up and tie up all loose ends, such as Force Unleashed 3. Make it a novel, of course. Yeah, nothing else more to say about that one. Seems self-explanatory. Next up, this is kind of going on from that point, but release the novels and comics that were cancelled due to the EU decanonization, such as Sword of the Jedi. And while I just really started reading and going through the books and comics and playing the games, that story is important. I know it's important. And not just that story, but other stories as well. Stories that people were really excited about reading, but couldn't due to the decanonization. Just another way to get more stories in there. And stories that people were excited about, well, can finally be released. Then, make an official timeline of the books, comics, games, films, and shows. Such as what was done with the essential reader's companion when dealing with the books, and it also lists some of the comics and games when appropriate in relation to the books. Of course, this was released before the decanonization and a little before the final few books were published, but still, it's a really good book. Really good companion piece for those who really want to start getting into the EU like I was. But it's not perfect. While it does list the novels and some of the YA books, it doesn't list all books, unfortunately. It lists the short stories, which was a nice touch, but it doesn't list, say, the Star Wars Missions books or the Adventures books. And while, yes, those were dealing with role-playing games, they're still stories, and I would like to know when exactly they take place. And yes, I know I can look it up on Wikipedia, the timeline of Legends material, but I don't fully like how Wikipedia made their Legends timeline, such as having multiple versions of the same story. You know, scratch that. That's a topic for another time. I would just like an official timeline by Lucasfilm that lists every story, like I said, from the books, games, everything that's in the timeline. List in chronological order. That way, I know what exactly I need to get, and I know how to place it on my shelf. Now, I'm a sucker for listing things in chronological order. But yeah. This one I've been wanting for a long time. Release the holiday special Droid and Ewok cartoons on DVD and Blu-ray. And also re-release the 2 Ewok films on Blu-ray. I mean, you can even have it all be in one Legends box set. It's like, I mean, come on. Having the holiday special would be amazing. I mean, sure, you can watch it online, but just to have it would be nice. And Droids and Ewoks, as far as I'm aware, haven't been released as entire series on DVD in either case. We've gotten DVDs with a handful of episodes each, but not complete series. And while you're at it, re-release the Clone Wars micro-series on Blu-ray so we can have that on Blu-ray. It seems obvious, but this is Disney Lucasfilm we're talking about. And this is a me one for sure, but release the remaining short stories that haven't already been collected in, say, the Tales line of books. I'm talking the short stories from the source books, adventure journals, magazines, and any online publications, because some of those short stories regarding the source books and adventure journals are expensive. Yes, you get those source books not just for the short stories, for everything else in it, but as of now, I want everything that has a story in it, that fits in continuity with the rest of the EU. I do plan on getting that stuff eventually, but I would just like to be able to put everything on the timeline shelf. And then the online publications, well, some of those websites are now defunct. Yes, people have archived